All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we wind down the day today, obviously this is going to be put up at a different time. It may be the morning when you see this, but we're here at the America Fest 2023, and I'm going through and interviewing incredible people that I appreciate, that I think make an incredible impact. And my next guest on the show is going to be Vince Dao at the Vince Dao on social media. Vince, I want to go through a few elements. You being a young conservative man,
right?
You have experience in a few areas.
Yeah.
You have experience in the conservative movement in our age bracket.
Right.
And then also you have experience in the dating world in our age bracket, right?
Something like that.
The secular and also the political.
Right.
So, what's your take on politics within our generation? Do you think that we're more involved in politics, we're more conservative, or do you think that our generation, and maybe you're a little younger than me, that the generation in your generation is more liberal? What's the engagement like when it comes to the political perspective from politics in our generation?
Sure. So I think the common perception among conservative media is, and it's been like this for decades, they've always done this, is look at these crazy young kids on the college campuses, they're protesting, they hate America, they're burning the flag. But what I've found out from my experience is, especially with young men, I don't know what it is, there's kind of a sleeping giant sort of waiting to be awakened in terms of conservatism. And I find this a lot of times at college, just normal guys you'll see. They might not even be the most political. I don't know if they watch this channel or anything like that, but they generally have kind of anti-woke beliefs, not big fans of Biden. And there's all these little subcultures you see, like, frat guys. You'll go to them. Most of them would lean Republican and stuff like that. The sort of finance culture, like I said, a lot of stuff with young men. I'm sure some with young women as well. I think the biggest problem conservatives have is that when you look at what the liberals do, the Democrats do, they take everyone in our generation who clearly, obviously would lean liberal just in terms of how they are personally and culturally. They turn them out to vote like crazy. They have them super duper engaged, the blue haired, girls you see on college campuses and stuff. And conservatives don't really have an equivalent to that. I think about where I go to school, it's a college town down south. And it's one of the bluest counties in the state of Florida. But I look around, I'm like, where is this coming from? And I've always said, hey, if you just went to, say, all the frat houses in the way they're supposed to vote in the student government elections and said, make sure you go vote in the elections, I don't know if all of Alachua County, Florida would turn red overnight, but it wouldn't be like the 80-20 split you're seeing. So I think the biggest problem is there's a lot of natural conservatives, or I guess maybe just natural right-wingers in Gen Z that are just not being awakened because we have no outreach strategy to them, I guess. Or when we do, they'll see the content on social media, but we don't get their vote. You know what I mean? Because I think in some ways maybe voting is seen as a nerdy thing or something among men, you know what I mean? Young men, it's like, who cares about that stuff? But if you handed them a ballot, you made them vote, or in the states where, ballot harvesting, quote unquote, is already a thing, just get those guys ballots, get them to vote. And I think you'd see a lot more results than you see currently in the ballot boxes with Gen Z. Yeah,
I see it from your perspective, because I think that people just aren't as enthusiastic about showing up to vote as they are when they have a grievance. Right.
Exactly.
If you feel as if America is inherently good, capitalism is great.
Yeah.
It's harder to fight for that versus if you think the world is coming to an end and everything you know about democracy is closing in on us, and the global warming is going out of control, and we're all going to die by 2030.
Right.
It compels you to vote. And I think that's the same thing that happened with Donald Trump. And then in 2020, they kind of almost did the reverse.
Yeah.
And they weaponized the hatred towards Trump to cause them to turn out to vote for Biden. I don't think many people voted for Biden to start with. I just think they voted against Trump.
Exactly.
And so you make a really good point with the younger generation, but you're saying that the younger generation tends to be more conservative in the way they operate. They just won't turn out.
Right. At least the conservatives in the young generation. And I don't know if you saw this poll or you ever covered it, but they did I think it was a University of Michigan study. They polled like young men versus young women. And what they found, and I think you kind of see on social media and stuff, is most young women lean liberal and, they tend to vote abortion, all those issues. What they actually found is that young men were plurality conservative.
Wow.
And they've actually grown they did it over the years. Like they measured this stuff since the 70s, the early 2000s. Young men are actually growing up in terms of being right wing. And this was with 12th grade boys. They're about to turn 18 years old. They're about to vote. But like I said, I don't think the Republican Party really has I don't think, first of all, they understand their demographic in Gen Z, much less how to get them out to vote. You know what I mean?
100%. And I think that it ebbs and flows because I feel like, you know how the saying goes, you know, hard men make good times produce soft men make hard times. That's kind of what we're seeing. We see that this generation of young people are experiencing the fallout from woke activism that's absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're questioning how many genders there are is out of control. Pronouns, out of control. Biological men with penises that are putting a wig on and a dress and some lipstick and competing and dominating women in women's sports.
Yeah.
People are starting to say, well, y'all done went too far. And I think that's what the next generation, thank God that next generation is exploring.
And here's the thing too, is it's natural for any young generation to be rebellious, to rebel kind of against their parents or the institution or whatever. And there's certainly an attitude right now in my generation that, hey, being right-wing, being anti-PC, anti-feminist, anti-woke, that is the teenage rebellion for a lot of young men. And but like I said, I think it's just a matter of turn that youthful energy and angst and sense of rebellion into a real political movement and coalition and strategy and stuff.
Do you think we need to change the vote on the day of, election day, voting on day of? Do you think we need to change that? Because I said this last year before the election.
Yeah.
I mean, not last year, but before the election happened. I had made mention, and people looked at me like I was a three-headed monster. I said, do not just vote on election day.
Yeah.
If you have an opportunity to vote early, vote early. If you have an opportunity to vote by mail, vote by mail. Get the vote out any way that you can.
Yeah.
Because come election day, the machines don't work. The lines are too long. That's voter suppression in and of itself. So what do you think? Do you think that has a significant effectiveness in turnout? Or
absolutely. Absolutely. I think ideally, obviously, we don't like the way the elections currently work, and we'd love to change that legislatively. But if you're going to be stuck in a system where it's not election day, it's election month, what Democrats will do with that, and what they have done with that, is, you know, if you personally still want to go and vote on election day, that's fine. But what they do is the low propensity voters, right? The people who lean Democrat but don't necessarily go out to vote. If you lower the bar, if you make it easier for them, they can mail in, they can go vote whenever. Maybe they're not available on this day, but that day. Republicans need to do the same thing, right? 100%. We need to go, because I guarantee you, especially in the small towns, it's always rurals versus the cities. How many just maybe say like trade worker, blue collar families out there, maybe they're not super political, they don't have the time to vote on election day, but if you worked harder to get it, they could get in there. I think that's what we need to do. So if you're hardcore political, you still don't trust all this stuff, it's fine to vote on election day, but I think the GOP does need a broader strategy of saying, yeah, you know, vote whenever you need to, but just make sure you get in your vote, and let's try to drive more for the low propensity, low engagement voters. Because sadly, that's how the system works now, is it relies on the masses. You see how high voter turnout is historically now. And so we need to figure out a way to get high voter turnout ourselves. And, you know, people obviously, when you say that, when I say that, they kind of cringe a little bit because they say, well, we don't want to do that. But it's like, we all agree we want to change the election laws. But if we don't win the elections,
we can't change the laws.
Like Pennsylvania, you know what I mean? Very broken. That's a swing state. Well, Democrat governor now, I think Democrat legislature are close to that. How are you going to do that? You have to somehow figure out to win a state like Pennsylvania, and that's how you got to do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 1,000% on that. You know, it's a battle of numbers. It's like I look at the vote like a donation.
Right.
If I have a donation platform and I give people the option to vote, to donate to me online, on social media, they can donate on the day in person, they can mail a check in, versus somebody that got one day, they got to physically come and give me money on that day. Who do you think will get more donations? The person that have more flexible donation schedule. And like you said, low propensity voters, you could go out during election season, you can go out and say, look, you sick of what's going on? Yeah, I'm sick of it. They're not sick enough to go to the mail. They're not sick enough to go to vote in person.
Yeah.
But they're sick enough that they'll do it right then, right there, give it to you. You can turn it in, or they'll mail it in.